People don't really know where their money's going. One of the first steps that I take people through is let's look at your bank account, your Venmo feed, your credit card statements for the last 90 days and just see where your money went. And there are always these, aha, I didn't realize I paid for that. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that thing. And so just bringing awareness to where the money is truly flowing is enough to shut down some of the things that it doesn't need to flow to.
Do you think money takes up more life space than it should? On this show, we discuss with and share stories from artists, authors, entrepreneurs, and advisors about how they mindfully minimize the time and energy spent thinking about money. Join your host, Jonathan Dio, and learn how to put money in its place and get more out of life.
Hey, welcome back on this episode of the Mindful Money Podcast. I'm chatting with Dr. Darla Bishop. Dr. Bishop, also known as the Finansis, is the founder of Finansis LLC in Lansing, Michigan, and the author of How to Afford Everything. Motivated by a challenging childhood in Detroit, Dr. Bishop's unique gift lies in her ability to motivate individuals to transcend limiting beliefs and cultivate a positive financial mindset. She believes that empowering individuals with financial knowledge creates prosperous families and resilient communities. Outside of her work as a speaker and financial coach, Dr. Bishop is also a professor of health policy at George Washington University and a director of AmeriHealth Caritas, DC. I wanted to have her on the podcast to share her down-to-earth approach to money matters. My sense is Dr. Bishop's simple guidance on mindset, budgeting, paying down debt, and saving is practical and can be transformative for individuals and families. Dr. Bishop, welcome to the Mindful Money Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I have been studying up and listening to episodes for the past week, and so I'm so excited.
I'm excited to have you here. To begin, where do you call home and where are you connecting from?
So I split my time. I'm mostly in Lansing, Michigan, but I'm a military spouse. So our previous assignment was in Washington, D.C. So I do spend still a bit of time there because I'm still employed by a company based there, but holding in from Lansing, Michigan today.
And do you still work at George Washington as well?
Yeah, I'm able to teach online, although I'm changing it. I haven't submitted my resignation yet. By the time this goes live, I will. I'm switching to institutions. I'll be switching to Michigan State for this fall.
Very cool. Very cool. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Detroit. So I'm only about an hour and a half away from where I grew up.
I'm curious about what sort of lessons about money and entrepreneurship you might have learned growing up in Detroit.
Many of my family members worked, of course, in the auto industry, Motor City. And so what was interesting about seeing folks who maybe had a high school diploma or GED, in some cases, some of the elders of my family, they were still able for a long time, really until the mid-90s, able to get very well-paid union jobs and even had things like profit sharing. So having some idea about what investing and having stock in a company could mean, because there was profit sharing agreements with many of the union contracts. And then folks who also sort of safe jobs, right, with other union shop jobs, like being transportation bus drivers, working for the state of Michigan in various offices. And so a lot of a wide range of money lessons, right? So the folks who had the well-paying, secure, safe jobs, which means something different now in 2024, had those stable paychecks and lived well, right? Didn't worry for many things. Even if a layoff happened because of the union protections, had some ways to make money during those off times or during the factory shutdowns, and never really had that mindset of being poor without, because there was this abundance sort of built into the way that they worked in the companies that they worked for, and that they were things always available, things like overtime, things like profit sharing, things like taking a second job. And so the folks around me were actually really open with how they used and spent their money. But then when things shifted, when economies changed, when those jobs changed, some of those behaviors and freedom with money actually got them into some trouble. And so getting to see a wide range of how the different folks in my family managed their money, mismanaged their money, some recovered and some didn't. And the lessons, depending on the family member, some lessons were really great. You know, you learn from your parents a lot of the same things you learn about sex. They kind of tell you a few things to really avoid, right? Don't get pregnant, don't open a credit card. But they don't necessarily fill in the details. And so if you are going to have a different career, a different way of how you earn your money, I figured out that I had to kind of blaze that trail and do a lot of reading to understand money differently than the folks around me had showed me how to use or not the money that they had available to them.
I'm wondering if you can like point to a specific experience, around the kitchen table, or you're at the mall with mom and dad, or, at a family outing, uncles arguing, anything that's like, okay, and there was a lesson that you drew out of that experience.
Oh yeah, I remember. And excuse me for laughing, because now that I look back at this moment, I'm like, this is hilarious. And this is probably why I do what I do. We were at a family barbecue, someone's birthday party. I have an aunt who loves to throw a kind of a big birthday party every year, usually at family barbecue, because that's her way of having a mini family reunion. Everyone knows that even if you're fighting, you come to the barbecue and you bring your side dish and you get along for that one day, because that's how we roll. And I remember overhearing a couple of the ladies in my family, probably an aunt and a cousin, talking probably, getting credit cards, that's how your credit goes bad. And I remember thinking, because I had to be a high school student by this time, it's not the credit card that makes your credit bad. It's the using and overusing and then not paying the bill on time. And so just kind of being like, well, I'm the dumb teenager who doesn't know anything, so I'm just going to mind my business and go get some more peach cobbler. But just like the misinformation, but also knowing that the person who delivered that message was absolutely doing that from a place of love and trying to tell a younger person in the family how to avoid something that could lead to financial ruin, but didn't do it all the way the right way.
I think it's really important to call that out. I mean, people will give you financial advice from their hearts, and they are clueless. Like it is mind blowing. Especially today, like social media world, TikTok really, are we listening to people that do TikTok videos for financial advice? Blows my mind. Can you give us a thumbnail sketch of your professional arc? How did you get to the point where you're going to write a book on personal finance? Like, where did that come from?
So it came from, I had a big traumatic thing happen when I was in high school, where I wasn't able to live with my mom. And so I was living with her sister, and her sister, right, had a very different money style. She was a couponer. She was a checkbook balancer. We're going to check all of our credit card balances and make sure that nothing is out of order. She was very meticulous in the way that she managed her finances, in a way that was different than the way that my mom was meticulous. And I remember just after going to live with her, because we kind of, all the things calmed down, and I sat on her bed and she was like, "There we go." I said, "Well, will I be able to go to college?" Because I knew I was smart enough, and I knew that my mom maybe kind of possibly had a plan for me to go when we figured it out when we got there. But now living with her sister, who was not college educated, but working at a job, and this big traumatic family thing that happens, I didn't know if I needed to just kind of take that off the list. And my aunt kind of looked at me and said, "Well, baby, you're smart. We'll figure it out. Where are you?" Because she wasn't exactly sure. I said, "Oh, I'm in ninth grade." And she said, "Oh, that means we have time. Don't worry. You keep getting your good grades. We will figure it out. We have time to figure it out." And part of figuring it out is she got me into this free college program in Detroit, called the Detroit Area Free College Engineering Program, where I take like these Saturday robotics classes and chemical classes, perfect for any burgeoning nerd. And one summer they offer, if you were a high school sophomore, you could actually go do math camp for 4 weeks on a college campus. So I applied and I wrote the letter and I got in. And I remember like packing up my little tote of, a couple of snacks, because in the program it offers you breakfast and dinner, but you had to figure out lunch on your own. So the way that we managed that expense, because it wasn't really what we had, is my aunt bought me a bunch of those little tuna fish sandwiches and the chicken salad that comes in a little can with the crackers and some, fruit cups and things. Because, you'll figure it out. Just eat a big breakfast and eat a big dinner and you'll be fine. I was like, "Oh yeah, that'll be fine." But I had a classmate who drove his Range Rover and got special permission through his parents to park his Range Rover on campus, because he needed to leave campus 2 days a week to go for the specialized lacrosse camp that his parents had already invested in. And so he needed a way to be able to drive the 30 minutes from the campus to the camp and then return to the dorm. So they made all these arrangements. Like, okay, so I've got a classmate who is driving a Range Rover, and I'm eating tuna fish from the little tiny can, and he's a really nice guy, but I think I like him a little smart. So if we made it to the same place, despite all the things it took me to get here, I can figure the money part out. So I started reading financial literacy books, because when people can't tell you what to do, you look at a book.
So I'm curious, do you remember what one of the books you read might have been?
Well, the first two, I don't remember which order. What, that big yellow and black book, it's like Personal Finance for Dummies.
Oh, yeah. I know that one. Yeah.
And there was one not by Michelle Singletary. I can't remember the author's name, but Michelle Singletary wrote the commentary on the back of the book. And Michelle Singletary, for a long time, had a column in the Washington Post. And for me, as a young Black woman, that was a big deal. Like, this Black woman is writing about money in the Washington Post. And so when she wrote the comment on the back of the book, I said, well, I gotta read it. And the title of the book was Girl, Get Your Credit Straight. Because it was also written in Black author whose name, of course, I can't remember. That's my note.
So what'd you end up studying in college?
Nothing related to money. Public health. So my degrees are in psychology, linguistics, because I've always been a lover of languages and how the brain works, and to process languages and to communicate things, and Spanish, because having at least one other language in your life is helpful if you ever need to escape the country.
I get kind of the experience, family experience, and some of the drama and some of the issues with money. How does that inspire you to write the book? Like, is there a trigger event or something? What book happened?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Part of it is I kept reading books because none of the books exactly gave me what I needed. What I figured out is that last I read more than 120 books on personal finance and mindset and career. And career specifically because that's how I know how to earn money, is through working for other people. But the folks in my family had different types of career than the career I was going to get it by virtue of being in college, being in a university, going for higher education. And so I was like, well, I need to know how to navigate that differently than going to the factory or going to the bus yard. And once I got to about book, 60 or 70, I was like, I could have wrote this book. And I just kind of kept verbalizing that, like, I could have wrote this book. And they were missing something. For me, there were two things missing from all these books that I had to cobble together from different books. Is one, very few of them told me where to start and what to do next. Because as a millennial and as someone coming up and having to, again, blaze this trail, because the folks ahead of me did things differently and I needed to do it differently from them, I was managing, okay, I'm going to have a career, I'm going to have student loan debt, I'm going to probably want to buy a house because they say the home ownership is really important. I want to go on vacation, I want to have some money in the bank, and I want to be able to retire one day. And so if things are like, which do I do first? And which is okay to pause or stop if temporarily while I figure out the type, right? The other thing is, almost all of the books had this really finger wagging tone. You are in debt because of your bad decisions. You don't have money saved because you can't control your impulses. And the way I grew up, that was so untrue. It was so untrue. I had amazing self-control. I knew more about money than anyone else because we had to really figure out how to use it, how to steal from Peter to pay Paul, how to get this done and get this done, even if it wasn't at the same time. And so I felt like actually a little disrespected anytime I'd read books with that tone, because they should have been giving me credit. If you had seen that menu of options available to me, the fact that I've made it here, I should have a ticker tape grade. Where's my grade? And so I wanted to write a book that left room and celebrated and congratulated someone who had lots of practice living without money, surviving without money, so that they could put those skills on the head, so that in learn how to live the book. But I needed a book that spoke life into someone who's trying to figure it out and not sure where to start or where to go after it.
Yeah, no shame, right? No shame. Right. You are where you are. Let's go from here.
Let's go from here.
So there's three things I wanted to ask you about from the book itself. You actually started with mindset. Why start with mindset?
Because so much of money is not math. Because if it was math, really the math involving money is third grade math. Most of us, even if we've had the craziest life circumstances, have at least been exposed to third grade math. Plus, minus, subtract, divide, right? But money isn't math. So much of how we relate to the world what we believe we can accomplish, what we believe we can do, has to do with money. And if we can change the way that our mind thinks about, relates to, plans for how we use money, and we can change all the other stuff way more easy. Way more easy.
Yeah. Where do you think the negative, or maybe not negative, but unhelpful mindsets come from? Where do we get them?
It's one of the first gifts our parents give us. And whenever I talk with someone, kind of walk them through, you read the book. So in the first chapter, I actually pose a series of questions. And when I'm doing coaching with someone, these are the questions that I pose to them as part of our discovery sessions, right? What are some of your first memories of fun? What were the messages you got? What was the first business you started? Because most kids have some entrepreneurial streak before it's all scaled out of the, right? They sell marigold seeds, or they cut grass or clear snow because I'm from Michigan, or have a lemonade stand, right? Like all kids have some business that they want to start at some point. And, what are the gifts that the adults around you gave you about money? Usually from a place of wanting to protect you from making bad choices or getting into a pinch or a bind, but don't actually fit your current life. So things like avoid all credit cards was something that I heard from one of my elders, right? But I know that if it wasn't for good credit and me leveraging the debt that I had available to me, there are some things that I would have never been able to accomplish because I didn't have capital to start. So the loan, the debt, is what helped me achieve the payment that then led to a better life, right? Like going to graduate school. I couldn't afford to go to graduate school if I knew to pay for it myself. So, but those student loans allowed me to get a degree that has allowed me to have a beautiful, fantastic, amazing career that is not only good for me and what I want to do with the world, but it has allowed me to help hundreds and thousands of people through the work that I do in my day job.
That's where they come from. They come from sort of family of origin, culture, wherever we are. So if you have these unhelpful mindsets, how does it show up in your life? Like where do you find it appears, and how does it affect your decision making?
So you save instead of invest. And the way this might really look is, say grandma's house was passed down in the family. And we won't even talk about whether it was done through the appropriate legal paperwork, because that's a different conversation for a different day. But let's say grandma's house was passed down, and so maybe a grandchild is now living in the house. And maybe because it's been paid off, thankfully, they don't have a bill other than the annual tax bill. But depending on their financial situation and mindset, they are probably less likely to fix the roof, to repair it. They'll repair it, but they'll hold off on the former fix. There might not be any improvements to the home. Things might be patched and corrected, but very rarely fully replaced, renewed, rejuvenated. And it's because of, I can't spend that amount of money. I can't let go of that amount of money. I can't take the loan to redo this part of the home. But that fear of letting go and making the investment in favor of saving means that maybe grandma's house won't make it to the next generation because it's in disrepair.
Wow, that's powerful. I have actually never thought about that, and this specifically investment in just maintaining the house, that as something that would stop happening just because you've inherited the house instead of maybe earned it yourself or paid for it yourself. That's huge. Okay, so you have this mindset. It's not necessarily a helpful mindset. How do you change it? How do you alter your mindset to be more positive and more into investment rather than saving?
Paying attention to what inputs you're getting. How do the people around you talk about money? Are they always stressed about money? Are they always figuring out how to make it work? Are they always talking negatively about money? Paying attention to the words you speak. So this thing, when I say in every podcast that I've ever done, always says this, so people are probably sick of hearing it, but it's so true, it works. That's why I keep saying it. Is change the way you think about money. Because your ears are the first to hear your words. And so as much as you can be in your head and repeat inside, I am not afraid to spend towards my future. I'm not afraid to invest. Money is all the way to it. I am working and things are working in my favor. As much as you can repeat that on silence, it is way more powerful when you say it out loud. Instead of saying, I'm broke. We don't say it here. Say it. That's not in my budget. That's not in my plan. I'm working towards something different. Because one, by you saying it out loud and your ears hearing it, your brain synapses, literally, the makeup of your brain, the pathways that your brain takes start to shift. And because you said it out loud to other people, those people will also kind of be put on notice that, okay, they're looking at, like, when I was in college, I used to say this all the time. I had this line that was, look, I've got to work. I can't come to your party unless it's going to go really late because I'd rather be tired than broke. Because that was true. For me, I was willing to give up rest. I was willing to give up fun because I knew it was going to take kind of a big amount of money for me to be able to change the trajectory in my life. And so while I was young and had the energy, I was able to go work for the money to change the trajectory of my life. It got so good that people were like, oh, we know you're working, you'd rather be tired than broke. We know you're going to go work all over 6 jobs. And they kind of say it with an eye roll. But even hearing them repeat it back to me, that's like, oh, that's right. Not only am I on this plan, they're on the plan with me because they know to invite me to the party only if it's going to go until 2.
The second question I have has to do with budgeting, sort of the iron wire upon which all financial success is hung, spending less than you earn. I'd say that half the stories and lessons in your book have something to do with spending less and saving more. Can you just give us a quick overview of some of the things that you're suggesting people do to spend less and save more?
Yeah, part of it is there's just a lack of awareness. People don't really know where their money's going. One of the first steps that I take people through is, let's look at your bank account, your Venmo feed, your credit card statements for the last 90 days, and just see where your money went. And there are always these, aha, I didn't realize I paid for that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that thing. And so just bringing awareness to where the money is truly flowing is enough to shut down some of the things that it doesn't need to flow to. The other piece is, look at your calendar. If you can look ahead to what's coming up, because it's not the everyday expenses that throw people off, right? The rent, the groceries, the gas, that's not what throw people off. It's those periodic, not regular expenses that we think only happen every once in a while, but it turns out they actually come up every month. They just look a little different. And so if you can look at your calendar and say, well, it's July, which means back to school is coming soon if I have children, which means we might try to do a family activity or go on a trip for Labor Day, which might mean as the weather gets colder, we might need to get new jackets or new boots, right? Depending on what part of the country you're in. And so if you can just think ahead to those, who has a birthday, who has a wedding, who has a baby shower that will need to spend money on, whether it's because we're helping put the event together or we're taking a gift. Because if you think ahead, when you see the little toy that you know the baby will like in the store on sale, you can get it on sale instead of driving to the party and say, oh, shoot, we forgot to get a gift. And then you pay $30 for something that if with a little bit of planning ahead, you could have paid $15 for. And so it's really bringing awareness into where the money in your life is flowing from and to, and are those the right places?
So I think I'm going to ask you this. This is kind of a silly question probably, but as a percentage of all the people you've ever talked to, as a percentage, how many don't have those little expenses that they forget about, like the $10 this and the $6 that? Zero, right?
Zero.
Yeah, me too. Like
Zero.
30 years in the business, everyone has leakage. Everyone. You could always
Everyone.
get more saving. Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
So the third thing I want to actually ask about, and I think this is something that you go into in a lot of depth, is debt. So lots of people struggle with, especially today, younger generations coming out of college, they've got credit card debt already. I think the average is like $3,500 of credit card debt for the average student coming out of college, which is insane to me, and student loans on top of that. If someone finds themselves in debt, what do they do? What's the best way for them to handle it?
So the first thing you have to do is write down every dollar you owe to someone else. Because again, that awareness matters, right? So if you borrowed $20 from your mom and you borrowed $100 from your sister, write that down too, in addition to the credit card and the student loan and the car loan. Because that'll let you see how big your burden is. You might feel it, but actually the practice of writing it down I actually tell people to do this with pen and paper, remove some of that power because you get to release some of that heaviness that comes with carrying debt by writing it down and seeing it on a piece of paper. So that's the first thing. The second thing is think about why you have the debt. When I talk to people, most of the reasons include I couldn't afford to do this thing, but I really had to do it. I needed to go to school. I needed to buy books. I had to fix my car. That was my way to work. And so that means that you have an income problem. We got to figure out your income. And so how do we work to improve how much money is coming in the doors so that you don't fall deeper into debt? So that might mean we dust off that college degree and we get you a different job, that we build you a new resume, that you go find a free or low cost certification program so that you can get a higher paying salary. It might mean side hustling up. I love a side hustle. On my website, I've got a list of all types of side hustles you can do that are app-based, that are in-person based, that are freelance, because sometimes the real issue is that you just didn't have enough money coming in to cover things you had to do, right? You can't not feed your children. You can't leave your car broken if that's the way you get to work. And so let's check the income piece. And then once we figured out, okay, yeah, actually the problem is not the income, it's how I spend it. Then let's figure out why you're spending money that way and shift it and make sure that we put a plan towards getting rid of the debt. And I 100% of the time, the different financial folks who are out in the world discuss these two main methods of paying off debt, either avalanche or snowball, right? Where you either pay highest interest first or you pay smallest amount first. And the reason that I could care less about the interest rates is because with the snowball effect, you get a win more quickly. And when you're in the process of changing how you live your life when it comes to money, you need wins early and often, or else you're going to give up and go right back to those bad habits because the bad habits were easier.
I've never heard it put quite that way. I mean, I've read it, but I've never heard it put quite that way. I always advise the other, and
because you're thinking about math. That's logical,
right?
Right? That's logical. Because when you pay avalanche, you're paying the highest interest, which means you'll pay the least amount of interest over time.
Right.
But I told you earlier, money ain't math.
Right. No. And that's I think what I was going to say is that's coming from a place of I have the privilege of just looking at the math because I don't struggle anymore. I did a lot when I was younger and growing up till like maybe even 10 years ago, right? But now I'm like, oh yeah, it's just the math. Just do the math, right? But that's not easy. You can't just do the math. It is emotional. It's very much emotional.
You've got to build folks, if they haven't had a win ever or in a long time, or they're feeling so down about their financial situation, their confidence is shot. You do not say, well, let's go pay off this $10,000 debt that you have at 20% interest.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's too much. It's too much.
Yep.
So you have to say, okay, you owe your cousin $20. What's the plan for that? Look, we got you some scores on the board. We crossed something off. Let's have a party. A small party where you clap for yourself and don't spend any money. But a party, right? And then, okay, the next debt is that $100 credit card bill from your gas credit card. All right, let's get that taken care of. So within 3 or 4 months, usually, you can clear 2 or 3 small debts off of the board. And do you know how triumphant that feels if you haven't had a financial win in so long? And that's just enough to keep you going. And you'll feel good. It'll prove to you that you've been doing it, that you can do it. You've already done it. Look at the board. Look at the sheet of paper. Look at the spreadsheet. And so then you might even have enough energy and brain space to get a little creative. Like, well, what if I had another $50 to throw at this? How much faster could I go? What if I had another $100 to throw at this? How much faster could I go? So we've got to build that momentum. And yes, if you look at studies, if you actually look at the financial studies that look at people who pay off their debt, avalanche versus snowball, the debt differential for people who actually complete the task of paying off their debt is really small percentage. It's less than 5% difference in how much they've paid in interest. And so, yes, the math is important. But if you're helping someone who needs to completely diametrically change how they relate to money and how they feel about money, they need the win. Get them that win.
Yep. No, I see it. This is a personal question. I hope you don't mind. You've got the job, you're the coach. How many streams of income have you created for yourself? And you said you had this list of side hustles and second jobs. How many streams have you created? And is that something you actually coach people to do? Hey, let's start up another thing. Let's do another thing. Let's add $100 from something else.
Yeah, well, we'll have to count them because part of my coping mechanism is that I just do what feels great and what I'm good at, but I don't always quantify them together because then I'd get overwhelmed. So we'll count them live if that's okay with you. So
go ahead.
I've got my day job.
Yeah.
I have the business, this business. We have real estate, so I have a property management business. But that was accidental. We are a military family, so every time we move, we have to figure out what to do with the house. Sometimes it's sell it, sometimes it's rent it. So we're kind of accidental property managers in that way. I teach, so I get income from teaching at universities. So I'm an adjunct professor. That's how I keep my brain sharp. I do speeches. And so I have another LLC that covers my professional speaking for tax purposes. So 5.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. What do you think about having multiple streams versus going deep in a single stream?
This is one of my pet peeves is people like, I got multiple streams of income because they talk about having 2 or 3 jobs. Well, first of all, that's the same stream. That's the same stream of earned income. So yeah, so I have multiple sources of income, but almost all of them involve me trading my time for money. The only one that has some passive income attached to it is the book business because I already wrote the book, I already did the work, so the money comes in. So that's passive. But everything else,
That's not a lot of money. I'm an author too. There's not a lot of money coming in.
It's not a lot of money. It's, 3 to, depending on which platform it's sold on, $3 to $11 per copy, right?
Yeah.
And so my passive income stream is really a trickle, and almost everything else, all my other sources of income involve me trading my time and my talents for money. And so, yeah, I think in any economy, it's always a good idea to have more than one place that can give you money, because you could get sick. You could just not feel like working the job or for the company you're working for. You might have a different level of energy and excitement about one part of it. I frequently coach people through, what does your job give you? And are you asking it to give you things that are not supposed to get from your job, like fulfillment and happiness? That's not what your job is for. Your job is for benefits. Your job is for as much pay as you can get, and to make sure that it's not ruining your health, physical, mental, or spiritual. As long as it's meeting those other things, you got to look somewhere else for the happiness and for the fulfillment.
I mean, I'm wondering, I'm questioning now if that's, I think there's a whole generation of people growing up thinking they're going to get their kudos, their fulfillment, their joy, their relational contact from their work. I think that's like, whether it's millennial, which I think you're a millennial, right? Or if it's even Gen Z is looking for that when they come out of college, like, this is going to be the place where I have my community. You're just saying no. Okay.
No. And I am totally biased because remember, I've told you at a couple of points in this, I knew when I was in college, I had to go make as much money as possible to change my life, right?
Yep.
Because I had obligations in the past, right? I'd taken on a little debt to get through school. I needed to save money in case I wanted to move to a different city, and moving cost money. You need a first month's rent. You might need a moving truck. You might go a few weeks without working, depending on how you've negotiated your job offer, right? And I needed money for the present because I also recognized that if I lived too tight, if I didn't give myself any pleasure, if I didn't let myself buy the apple that I actually like to eat versus the one that was on sale, that my body was not going to trust that we were leaving poverty for good. So I had to build in pleasure and happiness and experiences and spending time with my friends and having good things and living a good life, practice having a good life. So I need money for all 3 things. So my priority was going out and getting the money. And then if the job, as long as it wasn't hurting my mental health, as long as it wasn't hurting my physical health, it paid the bills and it had my benefits, I could get the other things I needed to feel like a whole person from church, from my sorority or my social clubs, from my family. Job is 40 to 60 hours. What am I doing with the other 108 that I have in a week?
Right.
Work isn't for everything. Now, some people are incredibly lucky and blessed, and most of these people are business owners because they've built the business they want to have many of those things built into how they earn their money. But I don't think it's a fair pressure. It's not a fair thing to put on your employer.
Right. It's impossible to expect it. Right.
Impossible.
Yeah. So there's this enormous amount of noise out there, and I want to just kind of really simplify it. So, you meet someone out there for the first time, and she's like, how do I get more successful? What's one thing she can do today that's going to lead to greater personal financial success?
The very first thing is see where your money went the last 90 days. And just, how do you feel about it? Play investigator. Get real curious. No judgment about it. No shoulding on yourself. We don't should on ourselves because it sounds really bad, right? I should. No, we don't should on ourselves. It's just, you're literally getting real curious. I wonder how I spent my money the last 90 days. That's interesting that's where my money went. Do I want to do something different in the next 90 days?
I just love your no nonsense approach. I think you could really help a lot of people. So I hope you get hope you write another book, and I hope you get a larger platform. So follow up to that question is, what is one thing that if they're doing it, they should stop doing it to get to that, financial success?
What is it called? Spray and pray, kind of like, I'll swipe my card and it'll work out. Like, no. That's not how it works. I know it feels like magic, but it's not actually. And so stop.
Stop. Just stop. Fair enough. Stop using the card. Dr. Bishop, just before we wrap up, I always like to loop back around a couple personal things. These are the things I kind of warned you about that might be zingers, but it's going to be fine. What was the last thing you changed your mind about?
So as a business owner, one of the things that I've had to change my mind about is what success is. Because, for instance, in my book, I went to a book fair and I invested quite a bit to do this book fair. I hired a helper to be there because they said there was going to be a big turnout. I invested in the materials so that the table and the booth would look great. I ordered additional copies of the book so that I have enough on hand. And so this was a sizable investment. Plus, I drove, 2 hours away to go to the event and got my hair done and put on a cute outfit. So also spent, a day and a half away from my family. That is usually our family day. And I remember, I sold 4 books.
Ooh.
So again, $3 to $11, right? So I didn't even make the hairstyle back.
Right.
And so I had to really change my mind about how I was going to measure success for that event. Otherwise, I would have been really upset and would have said no to the next one that I was invited into, which ended up being a fantastic way to connect, where I'm probably going to get 3 very well-paying corporate speaking gigs. So I had to change how I define success.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to do that all the time as a business owner, because business is real different than working for someone.
For
It's
sure.
real different when you're your own boss and you're your own peer and your own subordinate. It's weird.
And you have to make all the decisions and all the choices and everything comes your way and you screw it up and it's on you. And yeah, totally.
Right. You're looking in the mirror saying, hey, why'd you do that?
Simply. An idiot. And your partner is saying, why'd you do that? Right. All that story.
Oh, luckily I am
Turn
married to the best person in the world. So he just lifts me up in every situation. Thank goodness.
Oh my God. That's great. But you need someone to ask you the question though sometimes too. Why?
No, he knows I do it to myself enough.
Okay,
So he's the lover to kind of counteract the internal voice.
Okay, good. I think I have the inner voice and my wife is actually asking the question too, which doesn't maybe help. double whammy. Can you name a place that you visited that had a real impact on who you are today? And what was that impact?
When my husband was deployed to the Middle East, he had told me that instead of coming to the U.S. for his 2 weeks off that they get during a deployment, he said, "Well, you meet me in Europe. Let's go to Spain. You said you've always wanted to go to Spain. Meet me in Spain. And then if we can work it out, maybe we'll go to Paris. I hear Europe's really small, so maybe we can take a train or something." He's like, "But, I'm deployed, so I can't plan anything. You plan the trip, and I'll tell you which days my leave got approved for so you can buy the tickets and all that." So I say, okay. And I remember when we got to Paris, I cried. I cried. I remember just thinking how the hell did this girl from Detroit with a jailbird mom and a drug addicted dad end up in Europe on her own money? How?
Lots of
I'm
work.
here.
Lots of work, lots of planning, following your own advice.
It brought tears to my eyes thinking about it again.
Yeah.
And he proposed while we were there. So then that was another set of tears.
Yeah, of course. Lots of tears. When's the next trip?
We're going to Vegas. We love Las Vegas. We love Vegas. We go to Vegas almost every year. So we're going to Vegas for some holiday coming up. Some 3-day, 4-day weekend.
Labor Day. Yeah.
Labor Day.
All right, Dr. Bishop, thanks for coming on. Tell people how to connect with you. Where do they find you?
Yes, the easiest way to find me is darlabishop.com. And I am most active on Instagram at my_finances. Sounds like finances, but has a little sister in the end.
I appreciate it. This has been great. And I hope people get a lot out of it. And I hope they buy the book.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at mindful.money. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/mindfulmoney. We'll be sure to read those out on future episodes.